Hello everyone, welcome back again. And this video I'm going to be doing part 3 of my reading of the Silmarillion. So it's the third video and I'm covering from chapters 17 through to 21. In my view, this has been the best part of the Silmarillion so far. Some really fantastic stories within the book. Beren and Luthien, this kind of epic love story. You have that with lots of twists and turns within it, which I enjoyed. Really, I think, pretty kind of epic scale battle in this one. The fifth battle of the Unnumbered Tears, which, spoiler alert, does not end well for the elves, for the men, or for the dwarves. That one does not end well for the goodies, put it that way. And, you know, an epic duel as well within this part of the book between Fingolfin and Morgoth, which I see often talked about in Tolkien forums as one of the best duels that there is. There are, within this section of the book, so many opportunities from my point of view. You know, this could be adapted into a TV series quite easily, a lot of this part of this book. So many great stories and great moments. Amazon, I think, are doing the second age. They're not really covering the first age. From my point of view, having read the Silmarillion, this is kind of my second reading of the Silmarillion. I did read it a long time ago, but it's a bit disappointing in a way. From my point of view, I think there's a lot of awesome stuff in the Silmarillion in the first age, but who knows? Maybe it will be made into a film. Perhaps there's more from a film director yet. Who knows? But anyway, I'm here to talk about the book and not potential adaptations. But that is something I would quite like, I would admit. So yeah, we got a bit more into. So first of all, chapter 17 was about the coming of the men into the West. The men seeming to mix pretty well with one of the kings, one of the Elvish kings, King Felagund. Not so well with King Thingol, who didn't really want them to come into his realm, Doriath. So we start to get to know a little bit more that the men are starting to come into Middle-earth a bit more, get to know the elves, you know, and there's a bit of mixed feelings, it seems, between the two races, which we see develop more and more as the histories of Middle-earth, you know, continue to unfold. Chapter 18, this was really good. This is of the ruin of Beleriand and the fall of Fingolfin, and this is a chapter I was talking about with this really epic duel between Fingolfin and Morgoth. Essentially, what happens before this is that Fingolfin wants to raid Angband, take out Morgoth, but Morgoth preempts this preemptive strike, and he just completely sort of totally attacks the northern parts of Middle-earth, and preempts it in what's called the Battle of the Southern Flame, the fourth battle, or otherwise, I think, pronunciation, not sure if I'll get this right, Dagor Bragollach, something like that. The sons of Finarfin and Angrod and Egnar are killed in this battle, but King Felagund, who I mentioned earlier that he's getting on quite well with the men, he survives thanks to Barahir, a man who he had previously met. So very interesting that here we see actually the men helping out the elves, and what that leads to later on is also, you know, quite interesting. Spoiler alert. There's an epic duel. So this is where Fingolfin still, you know, he is obviously seriously, you know, for want of a better word, and he's seriously pissed with Morgoth. So they have a massive duel. Fingolfin is actually killed, but he does, before his death, manage to cut off Morgoth's foot with an epic swipe of his sword Ringil, which I thought was amazing. And we also learn that Galdor's son, in this chapter, Galdor's sons Hurin and Huor are brought to Gondolin, I think, and they're sort of, yeah, they're for safety. Turgon receives them quite well, perhaps surprisingly, and as long as they take an oath of silence and they don't share anything about this city, Turgon City, Gondolin, then they are obviously free to leave Gondolin, and so they choose to leave, going back to Dorlanin or somewhere that's called that name. Not entirely sure. And I like this sentence in this chapter where it says, "But the strange fortune of Hurin and Hur reached the ears of the servants of Morgoth." So basically, they got found out. They got found out that they were in Gondolin. Yeah, great chapter. Next chapter, Beren and Luthien, even better. I mean, a great love story. Starts off perhaps as you might expect a fantasy love story to start off, two ill-fated people, Beren and Luthien, meeting. One is a man, the other is an elvish woman, elf, and her kind of romance with this man is discovered by her dad, the King Thingol, who is not happy about it at all. Wants to know who this man is, but I think Luthien tries to keep him a bit of a secret, but agrees with her dad that he can meet Beren as long as he doesn't kill him, basically. So they meet, and interestingly, he's set on a quest to prove his love for Luthien, Beren, and that is to prize out a Silmaril. What this book is all about, the Silmarillion, and he's set on a quest to try and retrieve a Silmaril from Morgoth's crown. And that is where really this whole chapter really unfolds. Him on his mission, Felagund and a company of elves join him. I think, if I've got that right, they're captured by Sauron though, which causes obviously a massive scuppers Beren's plans completely. And thankfully he is actually, Felagund protects, in the first instance, Felagund protects and sacrifices himself for Beren. I think he's also called Finrod as well, so I'm calling him Felagund, but I think he's also called Finrod. Correct me for anything I get wrong, I don't mind, it's fine, it's cool. So what happens is that Finrod sacrifices himself for Felagund for Beren, in protecting him from Sauron in, I think, wolf form. I'm not sure I've got that right. So then what happens after that is Beren has to be rescued by this wolf. I think the wolf is called Huan, who wrestles with the Sauron wolf, and he wins. Eventually Sauron is defeated, and he weirdly becomes this vampire and just flees. And I believe that there's quite another cool little descriptive bit where it describes Sauron's departure. His spirit left its dark house. I quite liked that. And there we go. And obviously this chapter just, builds and builds. Beren meets again with Luthien, and they both go to try and retrieve this Silmaril. There's other stuff that happens in between as well, with these two brothers, I think. But eventually they go and try to retrieve the Silmaril again, and this time with Luthien singing, sort of keeping Morgoth at bay with her beautiful singing. Beren manages to retrieve a Silmaril, but on trying to escape from this kind of cave, I think, with Morgoth in, this really kind of nasty wolf called Karkaroth emerges onto the scene, and I believe he bites off Beren's hand whilst he's holding the Silmaril and digests it as well. So the wolf Karkaroth just goes completely nuts. He goes completely nuts. And then we and Beren goes back, seemingly having sort of partially succeeded. He did get a Silmaril, but he lost his hand and the Silmaril in the process, so I guess ultimately it's hard luck, but he hasn't really achieved his mission. He does go back to Thingol, showing what he did. And as I recall, I think Thingol was fairly sympathetic to his cause. trying to remember now what happens in the rest of that chapter. But eventually, Beren and Luthien are united in death, because even though, men are mortal and they die in a different way to the elves, I think, and everything, Luthien is sort of allowed by Mandos to join him in death, and even though he's a man, they are kind of, spiritually, or they're just kind of reunited at the very end of the story, and there's that kind of romantic touch to the end of the tale. So that was chapter 19. Now chapter 20 is the big battle, the fifth battle of Unnumbered Tears, and this was just this was fantastic. I mean, spoiler alert, I'll have to put a spoiler thing in the title of this video, I think, or in the description, because this will have spoilers with what happens here. But this is basically the plan of kind of Fingon and Maedhros to attack Angband from all sides, try and defeat Morgoth, and it really doesn't work out well. As I remember, Fingon kind of attacks from the west. He's joined by Hurin and Hjor. But one of the elves is actually provoked by the death of his brother. I think his brother's limbs are cut off, then his head, and he's provoked. So doesn't look good then for Fingon. And they are essentially, with the Nargothrond, they are just pretty much trapped, and they're forced to retreat. At the same time, pretty much, I think that you have Maedhros attacking from the east, but the men involved in that attack betray Maedhros and betray him. So total disaster, and all this division, I think, as well as the sort of baiting that Morgoth and his forces do and the orcs do, just causes a disaster for the good forces in this battle, and they are forced to retreat. Chased down though, Fingon and Turgon, who are now in focus, retreating, are chased by a Balrog called Gothmog. Gothmog kills Fingon. Fingon, our hero from the story earlier, where he, if you remember, he rescues Maedhros from Morgoth when Maedhros is kind of he's in that awful contraption on a rock face, and he has to be saved by Fingon. Now, Fingon, he's been a hero, I think, in a lot of this book, is killed tragically by the swing of the black axe of Gothmog. So, what can you do, hey? What can you do? Poor old Fingon. Poor old Fingon. So that basically means Turgon is in effect, I think, the High King of the Noldor from that point onwards as well. We see Hurin still involved in the battle, but eventually he is captured by Gothmog and brought before Morgoth. Sorry, captured by Gothmog and brought before Morgoth. Yeah. And there's a really cool, I think I'm going to read to you this a little bit actually from the book directly. So this is Morgoth talking, and he's basically threatening Hurin and torturing him, I think, as well. So he says, "Sit now there, and look out upon the lands where evil and despair shall come upon those whom thou lovest. Thou hast dared to mock me and to question the power of Melkor, master of the fates of Ardar. Therefore with my eyes thou shalt see, and with my ears thou shalt hear, and never shalt thou move from this place until all is fulfilled, until its bitter end." But apparently, in spite of the torturing and everything that poor old Hurin goes through, and remember he's I think he is basically at the mercy of Morgoth, but apparently Hurin never asked Morgoth either for mercy or death for himself or for any of his family. And somewhere here as well, there's a picture of that, I think, that scene that we get in the book. There you go. There's Morgoth and there's Hurin. So yeah, I absolutely, thoroughly, 100% enjoyed this particular section of the book. I mean, I'm calling it part 3, but that's just me calling it part 3 because it's my 3rd video in this kind of coverage of my Silmarillion read through. But yeah, sorry, I hope that was a fairly that was kind of me summarising and sharing some of my thoughts on it, and doing that. If I got any little details or any important details wrong, feel free to correct me. It's not the easiest of reads, the Silmarillion, so I may get the odd thing wrong here and there. And I'm sure there's lots of Tolkien nerds out there, waiting, like the orcs at Angband, to come at me if I got anything wrong. But anyway, see you next time. Hope you enjoyed the video. I think there will be a part 4 because I didn't quite finish it, so there may be another part in the Silmarillion series. Take care, everybody. See you next time.